Dames en heren, welkom terug en baie welkom by Sê Jou Sê met die Vaalweekblad. Dankie dat jy verlede week ingeskakel het. En onthou, as jy vandag sit en jy geniet hierdie episode, druk sommer aan die onderkant share, dat die hele wêreld kan kyk hoe lekker lyk dit hier by ons in die Vaaldriehoek. Nou vandag het ons een baie interessante storie en ek dink julle daar in die Vaaldriehoek, julle geniet hierdie storie want dit is erg op julle van toepassing. Vandag se insetsel gaan oor die ineenstorting van infrastruktuur as ook die finansiële verknorsing van die Empoleni plaaslike munisipaliteit. Nou die elektrisiteitkrisis in 3 riviere in vereniging is veral 'n groot kopseer en inwoners sit al amper 'n maand sonder krag. Christian Kloete het vir ons gaan inloer om meer uit te vind.
My name is Silas Zimu. I'm the team administrator for Basic Services, Infrastructure, Public Works.
Let's start with the suburb of Three Rivers first. On 1 December, it was reported by a mainstream daily newspaper that some parts of Three Rivers had been without electricity for 23 days straight. Today it'll be 24 days. This is an exceptionally long time. It's about 6 days short of a month. Can you please take us through what happened and what led to this situation? You know, how did we get here?
Yeah. Firstly, the whole infrastructure, be it electricity, water, sewer, stormwater of Empoleni is very old. Three Rivers in particular, cables installed in 1956, and we took pictures because we had to go and be there to see what's happening. They were still labeled during those years as to when it was manufactured, when it was installed. 1956. Nothing been done to it as in maintenance. Obviously, cable doesn't need that much maintenance because it's not oil cable, so it doesn't need a refilling. But because there's not been enough operational expenditure on repairs and maintenance, capital expenditure on replacement and refurbishment been done on the infrastructure, a lot of those cables are damaged. For many reasons, by many reasons, there's been a lot of development happening in Three Rivers. All the cables are on the road reserves, fortunately, but you can tell with the malls and every other things that the conversion of residential to commercial buildings, that people have been working there, and some might have damaged, and I'm saying might, because I don't want to allege when I don't have facts, might have damaged the cables and without notifying us. But what seemed to be very obvious is that the optic fiber guys were in a place a few months before these cables got damaged, and some of the areas you can actually tell that there were recent damages because of the underground drilling and the trenching for the new optic fiber. But on the substation side, where nobody except Empoleni has to take the blame, the infrastructure is very old. The doors of the substations are open, there's people sleeping in some of them, and the switchgear is very old, oil-filled switchgear, rail roll. The protection system is the one which is a big worry, because the protection system has to switch off the whole plant when there's a fault. So if a cable has been hit by anybody, instead of sending all those voltages, high voltages into the houses to damage the appliances, protection has to switch off the station to protect the plant and the residents. That didn't happen. And that's caused a lot of the cables to take too much pressure at a very short space of time, and a lot of them exploded at different points. One of the cables is a 2.7 kilometer cable round ring, and it had like more than 12 cable damages. So that meant you had to do 12 joints. And like in your hose pipe, every joint is your weakest link. At some stage, it's gonna explode. So the short solution that could be done was to reconfigure the network, do the backfeeding from different points which were still live. And at that time, I think it was more than 70% of Three Rivers being off. So it was brought back. At the same time, we then trenched a 2.3 kilometer trench to accommodate a new supply that can take the load into substations that are not overloaded, which are fairly new. And there's one in particular that we share the substation with Mid-Vaal, and it's fairly in a good state. And that's the one where we're going to move all the rest of the load to that new substation. So most of the customers were off for about 13 days. But during that time, we were then hit by that big thunderstorm, and Three Rivers was the worst hit actually. And when most of the customers were back on, we then had a lot of small ones, big trees having fallen down. I think the West Street hit was Tugela Street, and the guys took 3 days to get to it because we didn't have enough resources to can move people there because we were busy with that big outage. But it was sorted out. I visited and I spoke to the customers that had notified me about it. There were other small places everywhere, but most of them were a good protection or a good breaker, good circuit breaker into individuals' houses where during the storm, during the outage, it responded, it protected the appliances. But a lot of customers are not that learned to can know that you just needed to push it up. But most of those isolated ones were overhead lines that were brought down by the trees.
A lot of residents during the whole time the power was off, some people told me they felt left in the dark about the situation with regards to the progress that had been made towards restoring the electricity. Would you not agree that the municipality has the responsibility to effectively communicate with residents when situations like these occur?
Yeah, obviously when there's no power, TV doesn't work. Most radios don't work. Unlike my dad, I think he's the only one with a ever-ready battery radio, which most of the time doesn't work. But Three Rivers has got an interesting media of WhatsApp group. There's so many of them on that, which I think a lot of people are on it. Our electricians update that every day. I've not responded to it, but I watch what is being said there. Three Rivers hosts a lot of CEOs of big companies in the Vaal. Some of those companies are actually those that we order from. So when we order a cable from a manufacturer, I'm not surprised when on that WhatsApp group there's a message that say they're trying to order a cable and it's not available. Who else would know?
Okay. So that's the way you communicate through the WhatsApp.
But there is the ward councillors, I must give to them. They push us very hard on communication, and that communication has been going out. Obviously, where the team has committed that within 3 days it will be restored, it took 13 days. It was because it was not what they thought it was. It was not a small outage.
Moving away from Three Rivers, let's talk about Sonland Park, Waldrift, Redan, also Van der Belt Park, other areas. Is that the same problem, basically infrastructure that hasn't been maintained?
Throughout Mfuleni, all the equipment is at risk. Okay, but Sonland Park had a different problem. Eskom decided to switch off the intake point on the Sonland Park side, which then affected two things: electricity supply and water supply. Because at Sonland Park, the biggest reservoir of Mfuleni, owned by Rainwater, is actually on the Sonland Park side, and it supplies up to the border of Palm Springs and Everton North. It's a big area that it didn't have water because of that. Hence, we had to jump to negotiate with Eskom to say, we know we owe you 2 billion, but let's talk about how we can pay you and restore the power there. And it was restored, I think, after 4 days. The second problem with Sonland Park, if you go there now, you will see the optic fiber guys are in Sonland Park, and they are hitting both electrical cables and water cables. And up to now, the condition that our roads department is giving them on their way leaves is that whatever they damage, they fix. Let's give it to them. They fix things, but they have caused power outages.
The situation in Three Rivers and elsewhere, it's people were furious, and that left some people to question whether Mfuleni has competent people in the electrical department. I don't know if you want to answer that.
Yeah, look, the Mfuleni electrical department is running on about 40% competency, 60% vacancy. It's a high number. You will have to look at different ways of sorting that out. You can't take students from university or technicons to come and work. They wouldn't know where this underground infrastructure is. We are looking at calling back what I call the old topis, those Bure old CNs that used to work here. And I'm told that there's about 6 that are prepared to come and help us with an intention of them transferring skills to those that we will recruit as well. I was trained like that. I would not have known anything if somebody didn't train.
Does Mfuleni have the right tools and equipment to find electrical faults, for example? I heard a lot of time is wasted to find faults along the lines, along the cables when they occur.
It's very easy on an overhead line. It's visible, you can see. You drive or you walk the line, you can see a breaker is tripped. A cable is cut by a tree or whatever, or a tree is touching a cable and it's causing an arc. Difficult on the underground ones. I still have to know of any company, including Eskom, that can trace it quicker. South Africa hasn't got what I call the automated network system, where we have got a control room which you can spot exactly where the problem is. We're heading there. Maybe for a place like Mfuleni, being smaller than other metros, it would be easier to implement, and we are looking at those solutions. But we have to trench, we have to do visual inspections of where the damage is if you can see it, and when you see it, you then have to test what type of a damage it is, and that's where you then need the cable testers. The cable testers, they differ in sizes. Some can test for 20 meters. I'm told there's new ones that can test for 1 kilometer, and they have been used, but they're not owned by Mfuleni. We outsource that. We bring in the contractors that have got those equipment. Our equipment, a lot of it is broken and has to be repaired, and some were taken when Eskom attached some of the plant, so it's not a secret.
How will this dire situation be made better? Are there any plans of upgrading electrical infrastructure, or does the municipality even have money at this stage for things like that?
When I got here, it was interesting because there was a meeting hosted by the mayor with large power users, and they kept on saying, we can help, we can help. And I was like, do they know what is called the Municipal Finance Management Act? Everything has to go out on tender. And ever since, I've been revisiting the same MFMA, and I found that we can have private sector participation on the PFMA side, which is still government. We can allow these people to invest. And I can tell you now, we've got, as we're talking now, NW7 substation in Vanderbilt Park. It's under repairs since Friday. Paid for by the large power users of Vanderbilt Park without charging us. They are completing the rewiring of the protection system. It will be state of the art by Wednesday next week. We've got Premier Foods for Leo Gale substation. It was hit hard by the storm. The transformer caught fire. Within that storm was on Friday. When I passed there, because the storm caught up with me while I was in front of the big park, and I was trying to follow it because you could see what was happening, where it was moving. After it hit Sharpeville, it hit Leo Gale substation and went into Three Rivers. By Saturday afternoon, with the help and the fund of Premier Foods, that substation is restored. So that's another private sector participation at their own cost, by the way. We only specify what equipment they must use so that we can know what is being installed for maintenance purposes. And for Three Rivers area, we are at an advanced discussion with big LPUs that are going to pay for a transformer to be repaired at 6 million. So the large power users are coming on board. So that takes away a lot of pressure from us, and it's not going to be a once-off. They want to do more than what is actually critical, which is good. But long term, we've now budgeted in this financial year, we've got about 300 million of capex work, and adding that to the 150 million odd that the regulator has given us as a 6% repairs and maintenance on the tariff. I think we're close to around 500 million on the electricity infrastructure alone for a year. And if we can increase that to be double for the next financial year, then we'll be heading the right direction.
Sjoe, daai was nou lekker baie inligting gewees. Hoorie, maar baie dankie dat jy saam gekyk het. Ons waardeer dit dat jy elke week inskakel en asseblief onthou, druk daai share knoppie en kyk elke week saam en wys vir die hele wêreld wat gaan aan hier by ons in die Vaal. Nou jy kan ook by ons adverteer, kontak gerus vir Marita Lombard by 082 476 3964. Dan gesels ek en jy weer volgende week saam op Sê Jou Sê met Vaalweekblad.